They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned the hard way that greed can thin even the strongest family bonds. My name is Victoria Sterling, and at 73 years old, I thought I knew my daughter better than anyone. After all, I raised her alone after my husband passed when she was just 12. I sacrificed everything to give her the best life possible: private schools, college, a wedding that cost more than most people's houses. But last Tuesday, as I sat in my modest kitchen in Asheville, North Carolina, listening to my own flesh and blood tell a room full of strangers that I was broke, bitter, and burdened, I realized I had been living with a stranger for 60 years. What my daughter Vivian didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the broke woman she was trying to commit to a state facility was worth $12 million. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's letting people reveal exactly who they are when they think you have nothing left to lose. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to know that this story gets more shocking with every twist. If you're enjoying stories about family betrayal and justice, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It really helps our channel grow. And if you have your own story about family drama or unexpected revenge, share it in the comments below. Trust me, after you hear what my daughter did next, you'll have plenty to say. Now, let me take you back to that rainy Tuesday when everything changed. The rain drummed against my kitchen windows like impatient fingers as I watched my daughter pace across my linoleum floor in her designer heels. It was 3 days after my 73rd birthday, a birthday she'd missed because of some important client dinner in Charlotte. Now here she was, flanked by 2 people I'd never seen before, a sharp-faced woman in a navy business suit and a younger man clutching a leather briefcase. "Mother, we need to talk," Vivian said, her voice carrying that condescending tone she'd perfected in her corporate job. She'd inherited her father's auburn hair, but none of his warmth. At 45, she looked every inch the successful real estate developer she claimed to be. Though I'd noticed the designer clothes getting more expensive while her visits became less frequent, the woman in the suit stepped forward. "Mrs. Sterling, I'm Patricia Hawthorne from Mountain View Senior Living Consultants. Your daughter is concerned about your welfare." I set down my coffee mug, a chipped ceramic piece I'd had for 20 years, and studied their faces. "My welfare." "Mother, look round." Vivian gestured dismissively at my small but tidy kitchen. "You're living like a pauper. This house is falling apart. You can barely afford groceries. And yesterday, Mrs. Kowalski called me because you were acting confused at the grocery store." That was a lie. Martha Kowalski and I had been discussing the crossword puzzle while waiting in line, but I let Vivian continue. "We think it's time to consider your options," the young man said, opening his briefcase. "I'm David Chen, Mrs. Hawthorne's legal associate. We can help transition you to a facility where you'll receive proper care." I looked at my daughter, my only child, the little girl I'd rocked to sleep after nightmares, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose college tuition I'd paid by working double shifts at the textile mill. "And what if I don't want to go anywhere?" Vivian's face hardened. "Mother, be realistic. You're broke. You can't keep living in denial. This house is mortgaged to the hilt. Your medical bills are piling up. And frankly, you're becoming a burden on everyone around you." There it was, burden. The word hung in the air like poison gas. Patricia Hawthorne slid a glossy brochure across my kitchen table. "Sunset Manor is a wonderful facility, very affordable, and they have payment plans for families in your situation." I picked up the brochure, noting the fine print about state assistance programs and charity care. They thought I was destitute. They thought I was some pathetic old woman clinging to independence I couldn't afford. If only they knew. After they left, with promises to give me time to think, I sat alone in my kitchen listening to the rain. Then I walked to my bedroom and opened the bottom drawer of my dresser, pushing aside old sweaters until my fingers found the manila envelope I'd hidden there 15 years ago. Inside were documents that would have changed everything they thought they knew about me. Stock certificates, bond portfolios, and a letter from my financial advisor confirming what I'd suspected for months. My investments had grown beyond my wildest dreams, the small amount I'd scraped together after William's death. Money I'd invested quietly, carefully, never touching the principal, had mushroomed into a fortune worth $12 million. $12 million, more money than Vivian made in her best year. I'd kept it secret because I'd wanted to see who my daughter really was when she thought I had nothing. I'd wanted to know if she'd still love me, still visit me, still care about me when there was no inheritance to hope for. Now I knew the mill, where I'd worked for 30 years, had been bought out by a tech company in 2010. All employees with more than 20 years of service received stock options as part of the buyout, stock I'd tucked away. Why and forgotten about. That forgotten stock had split 3 times and was now worth a fortune. My financial advisor, James Morrison, had been trying to reach me for months about quarterly reports I'd been too afraid to open. I'd been living on Social Security and William's small pension, letting everyone believe I was barely scraping by. I'd wanted to leave everything to Vivian, had planned to surprise her on my 80th birthday. I'd imagined her joy, her relief, her gratitude. Instead, she saw my situation as an inconvenience to be managed. I picked up the phone and called James Morrison. Mrs. Sterling, I've been trying to reach you. Have you seen your latest portfolio statement? James, I need to ask you something. If someone were trying to have me declared incompetent, would they be able to access my accounts? Silence. Then, Victoria, what's going on? I told him everything about Vivian, about the intervention, about Sunset Manor. My God, he breathed. Victoria, you're one of our most successful clients. Your portfolio has grown by 23% just this year. Are you telling me your daughter doesn't know? Nobody knows, James, and I think it's time to find out what kind of person my daughter really is when she thinks there's nothing to gain. 2 days later, Vivian returned with Patricia Hawthorne and a new addition, a man she introduced as Drive Reynolds, a geriatric specialist. We've brought someone to do a preliminary assessment, Vivian announced, not bothering with pleasantries. Dr. Reynolds was younger than I'd expected, probably early 50s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Mrs. Sterling, I'm here just to chat. Your daughter is concerned about your cognitive health. I invited them to sit at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd signed Vivian's permission slips for school trips, helped her with homework, listened to her teenage heartbreaks. Now, Mrs. Sterling, Dr. Reynolds began gently, can you tell me what year it is? 2025. It's July, and it rained yesterday, but it's sunny today. The president is Donald Trump, though I didn't vote for him. I had oatmeal for breakfast, and I'm planning to make tomato soup for lunch because the tomatoes from my garden are finally ripe. He smiled. That's very good. Can you count backwards from 100 by sevens? I rattled off the numbers without hesitation. Then I drew a clock showing 3:15 when he asked, remembered 3 words after 5 minutes of conversation, and explained the meaning of don't count your chickens before they hatch. Vivian's face grew tighter with each correct answer. Mrs. Sterling, Dr. Reynolds said finally, your cognitive function appears excellent. I'm not sure why, Dr. Patricia Hawthorne interrupted. Perhaps you should evaluate her living situation, the condition of the home, her financial capacity to maintain independence. Dr. Reynolds glanced around my clean, organized kitchen. The home appears well maintained. Mrs. Sterling, are you having trouble managing your finances? This was my moment. I could have told them everything. I could have pulled out my portfolio statements and watched their faces change from pity to shock to embarrassment. Instead, I said, "I manage on what I have." Vivian leaned forward. "Mother, drive. Reynolds should know that you've been struggling to pay bills, the mortgage on this house, your medical expenses." "Vivian," I said quietly, "when did you last help me with any bills?" Her face flushed. "That's not the point. The point is you can't keep living in poverty out of stubbornness." "Doctor," Reynolds stood. "Mrs. Sterling, I don't see any indication that you need residential care. You appear mentally sharp and physically capable of independent living." After they left, Vivian lingered in my driveway. Through the window, I watched her on her phone. Her gestures animated and angry. When she finally came back to the door, her expression had changed. "Mother, we need to discuss your future seriously. I've been patient, but this is getting ridiculous. I've already put a deposit down at Sunset Manor without asking me. You're not thinking clearly about this. Sometimes children have to make hard decisions for their parents." The condescension in her voice made my chest tight. "And what if I refuse? Then I'll have to explore other options, legal options." There. It was the threat I'd been expecting. My own daughter was prepared to have me declared incompetent to get me out of her way. That night, I called my old friend Ruth Carpenter, who'd worked as a paralegal for 40 years before retiring. "Ruthie, I need some advice about elder law." After I explained the situation, leaving out the part about my hidden wealth, Ruth was furious. "Victoria, what Vivian's threatening is elder abuse. You can't just warehouse someone because they're inconvenient, but she could try to get guardianship if she claims you're incompetent with money." "What would I need to prove I'm competent?" "Financial records showing you can manage your affairs, medical evaluations, character witnesses." "But Victoria, why are you letting her think you're broke?" I couldn't explain it, even to Ruth. "How do you tell your best friend that you're testing your only child's love with $12 million? What I did next was risky. Some might even call it cruel, but sometimes you have to set a trap to catch the truth. And the trap I was about to set would reveal my daughter's true character in ways I never could have imagined. If you're loving this story of family secrets and revenge, hit that like button to show your support. The next morning, I drove to James Morrison's office in downtown Asheville. His financial planning firm occupied the top floor of a restored historic building, all gleaming wood and professional certificates. "James, I need you to help me set a trap." He raised an eyebrow but listened as I explained my plan. "I need you to create some fake documents, nothing illegal, just misleading. I want Vivian to think there's a small inheritance she doesn't know about." "Victoria, I don't know if I'm comfortable with a life insurance policy. Something small, maybe $50,000. Enough to get her attention, but not enough to seem impossible. Can you create some paperwork that suggests I've been hiding this from her?" James sighed. "I suppose I could draft a letter that implies you've been contacted about an old policy, something your husband took out that you forgot about." "But Victoria, why are you doing this?" "Because I need to know if my daughter loves me or just wants me out of the way, and I need evidence of her true intentions." 2 days later, I left the fake documents where Vivian would find them during her next visit. A letter from Metropolitan Life Insurance claiming I was entitled to a $50,000 payout from a policy William had purchased in 1985. I made it look like I'd tried to hide it. Left it partially concealed under some bills on my kitchen counter. Vivian arrived that afternoon with Patricia Hawthorne again. "I'm here to help you pack some essential items," she announced. "I've scheduled your move to Sunset Manor for Monday. I haven't agreed to anything." "Mother, we've been over this. You don't really have a choice." While Patricia went to assess my bedroom, I watched Vivian's eyes sweep across my kitchen counter. I saw the moment she spotted the insurance letter, the way her body went still, the way she casually moved closer. When Patricia returned, Vivian said, "Mother, I need to use your bathroom." I knew she was really going to read that letter. I gave her 5 minutes, then knocked on the bathroom door. Just a minute. She called, but I could hear papers rustling. When she emerged, her entire demeanor had changed. The pushy urgency was gone, replaced by a calculating calm. "Mother, I've been thinking. Maybe we're rushing this. Maybe you need more time to adjust." To the idea, Patricia looked confused. "But I said she needs time. Let's table this discussion for now." After they left, I called Ruth. The bait is taken. She found the fake insurance documents, and suddenly she's not so eager to ship me off to the nursing home. She wants to keep me close now. Ruth was quiet for a moment. "Victoria, that breaks my heart. Your own daughter, I know. But now I need to see how far she'll go." Ladies, what happened next broke my heart in ways I didn't think were possible. Just when I thought I knew how low my daughter would sink, she found a way to go even lower, and she dragged someone I loved into it. If you have a complicated relationship with your adult children, you're going to want to hear this next part. Please share this story with someone who needs to hear it. The next few days brought a parade of unexpected visits from Vivian. She brought groceries I hadn't asked for, offered to help with household repairs, and even suggested we spend more time together. "I've been thinking about what you said," she told me over coffee in my kitchen, about family, about how I haven't been visiting enough. She was sitting in the same chair where she'd called me a burden a week earlier. "I want to help you, Mother, with your finances, with the house, with everything. You shouldn't have to struggle alone. I'm managing fine, but are you? Really?" She leaned forward with practiced concern. "I know about the insurance money, Mother, there." I kept my expression neutral. "What insurance money?" "The policy Daddy took out. I saw the letter. $50,000 would make a real difference in your situation. I let silence stretch between us. I could help you claim it," she continued. "These insurance companies try to cheat elderly people all the time. I have lawyers who specialize in this kind of thing." "That's very thoughtful of you. In fact," she said, her voice becoming more businesslike, "it might make sense for me to handle all of this for you, as your financial power of attorney, just to make sure you don't get taken advantage of." My heart sank even as I admired the elegance of her manipulation. She wanted control of my finances, starting with the fake insurance policy. "I don't know, Vivian, that seems like a big step." "Mother, you know you can trust me. I'm your daughter. I love you." The words should have been comforting. Instead, they felt like a knife between my ribs. But the real betrayal came the next day, when my granddaughter Jessica showed up at my door. Jessica was 22, fresh out of college, and had always been my bright spot in the family. She had her grandfather's gentle nature and her own fierce intelligence. She'd visit me every few weeks, never asking for anything, just wanting to spend time together. "Grandma Vicky," she said, her eyes red from crying, "Mom told me about your situation." "What situation is that, sweetheart?" "About how you've been lying to everyone, about hiding money while pretending to be poor, about making everyone worry about you for no reason." The words hit me like physical blows. "Jessica, Mom showed me the insurance letter. She said you've been playing some kind of game, making her feel guilty for trying to help you when you actually have money hidden away." My granddaughter, my beloved Jessica, was looking at me like I was a stranger. "She's worried about your mental state, Grandma. She thinks maybe you're getting paranoid or confused about reality." "Jessica, sit down. Let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you let Mom agonize over your living situation when you were secretly fine. How you made her feel terrible for wanting to get you help." I saw Vivian's handiwork in every word. She'd twisted the narrative, made herself the victim of my deception. Sweetheart, things aren't what they seem. Then tell me the truth, all of it, right now. I looked at my granddaughter's furious, hurt face and realized I was at a crossroads. I could tell her everything about the 12 million. About Vivian's true nature, about the test I'd been conducting. But if I did that now, it would look exactly like what Vivian had already suggested, the paranoid delusions of an elderly woman. I can't, I whispered. Jessica stood up. Then I can't either. Grandma, I can't keep pretending everything's okay when you're clearly having some kind of episode. She left. And for the first time in this entire ordeal, I cried, not for the money, not for Vivian's betrayal, but for Jessica. I'd lost my granddaughter's trust, and I wasn't sure I'd ever get it back. That evening, Ruth called Victoria. Jessica called me. She's devastated and confused. She asked me if I thought you were losing your mind. What did you tell her? I told her you were the sanest person I knew, but I think she needed to hear it from you. Victoria, this has gone far enough. You're destroying your relationships with everyone who loves you. Jessica doesn't love me, not anymore. That's not true, and you know it. She's scared and confused because the adults in her life are playing games instead of being honest. End this, Victoria, before you lose everything that actually matters. I spent the weekend in agony, weighing Ruth's words against my need to know the truth about Vivian. By Monday morning, I'd made my decision. I called James Morrison first, then Patricia Hawthorne, then Vivian. I want to meet with everyone, I told my daughter. Today, at James Morrison's office downtown, I'm ready to discuss my future, but I want everything out in the open. Vivian sounded surprised but pleased. Of course, Mother, that sounds very reasonable. I spent the morning getting ready, choosing my clothes carefully. I put on my best dress, navy blue with small white flowers, something I'd worn to church for years. I styled my silver hair and applied a touch of lipstick. I wanted to look competent and dignified. James Morrison's conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Asheville. By 2 o'clock, everyone was assembled. Vivian, Patricia Hawthorne, Dr. Reynolds, whom Vivian had insisted on bringing, Jessica, and Ruth, whom I'd asked to attend as my support person. Thank you all for coming, I began, standing at the head of the polished oak table. I've called you here because there have been some misunderstandings about my situation, and I think it's time to clear the air. Vivian leaned back in her chair with the satisfied expression of someone who thought she was about to win. I'm glad. You're finally being reasonable. Mother, I'm going to be very reasonable, I agreed. James, would you please explain to everyone here what my financial situation actually is? James Morrison opened a thick folder and spread documents across the table, portfolio statements, investment summaries, account balances, all bearing my name, Mrs. Victoria Sterling. He said formally, currently maintains investment accounts with our firm totaling approximately $12 million. The silence in the room was absolute. Patricia Hawthorne's mouth fell open. Dr. Reynolds blinked rapidly behind his glasses. Jessica stared at the documents as if they were written in a foreign language. Vivian went white. That's impossible. The assets consist primarily of stock options from the Millfield textile buyout in 2010, which Mrs. Sterling invested conservatively and allowed to grow over 15 years. She also holds municipal bonds, treasury securities, and a diversified portfolio of blue-chip stocks. But Vivian stammered, the house. The way you live, I chose to live simply, I said quietly. I chose to live on my Social Security and your father's pension while my investments grew. I chose to see who my daughter really was when she thought I had nothing to offer her. Jessica was staring at me with a mixture of awe and confusion. Grandma, why didn't you tell us? Because I wanted to know if you'd love me when you thought I was poor and inconvenient. Vivian found her voice. This is crazy. You let me worry about you. You let me think you needed help. You weren't worried about me, Vivian. You were inconvenienced. By me, there's a difference. Patricia Hawthorne gathered her papers. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Mrs. Sterling clearly doesn't need our services. Wait, Vivian said sharply. This doesn't change anything. She's still been acting irrationally, hiding money, playing games with her family. Actually, Dr. Reynolds interrupted. Mrs. Sterling's behavior shows sophisticated financial planning and excellent judgment. She protected her assets while evaluating the motivations of people around her. That's not irrational, that's brilliant. I turned to face my daughter directly. Vivian, a week ago you called me broke, bitter, and a burden. You tried to have me committed to a state facility. You threatened to have me declared incompetent. All because you thought caring for me would be expensive and inconvenient. That's not yesterday. You offered to be my financial power of attorney so you could help me claim $50,000 in insurance money. You were willing to take control of my finances based on a policy worth less than half of 1% of my actual wealth. Vivian's face was cycling through emotions: shock, embarrassment, anger, and something that might have been shame. And Jessica, I said, turning to my granddaughter, your mother convinced you that I was having mental health issues because I wouldn't immediately hand over control of my money to her. Grandma, Jessica whispered, I'm so sorry. I didn't understand. You understand now. Your mother saw dollar signs and decided I was incompetent, but when she thought there was money to be managed, suddenly I was competent enough to sign legal documents giving her control. Ruth squeezed my hand under the table. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. James has prepared new documentation for my estate. Vivian, you are no longer my primary beneficiary. Vivian shot to her feet. You can't do this. I can do anything I want with my money. It's mine. I'm your daughter. Yes, you are, and that should have meant something to you when you thought I was poor. The room fell silent again. Jessica was crying quietly, and even Dr. Reynolds looked uncomfortable. Jessica, I said gently, you're young, and you were manipulated by an adult you trusted. I don't blame you for believing your mother, but I need you to understand something. Love isn't conditional on wealth. The grandmother you visited every few weeks, the one who made you cookies and listened to your college stories, she was exactly the same person whether she had $12 or $12 million. I know, Grandma. I know that now, Vivian, I said, my voice harder. You have a choice to make. You can continue to see me as a financial opportunity to be managed, or you can try to rebuild a relationship based on something more than money. This is blackmail, she said bitterly. No. It's consequence. There's a difference. James Morrison cleared his throat. Mrs. Sterling, should I proceed with the new documentation? I looked at my daughter one more time. Vivian, do you have anything you'd like to say to me? She stood there for a long moment, and I could see her calculating. I could see her weighing her words, trying to figure out what would get her back into my will. Finally, she said, I think you're being cruel and manipulative. Then we're done. Here, after the others left, Jessica stayed behind with Ruth and me. We sat in James Morrison's office as the late afternoon sun slanted through those tall windows. And I tried to help my granddaughter understand what had just happened. I feel like I don't know anything anymore. Jessica said, about Mom, about you. About our family. You know the important things. Ruth said gently, you know your grandmother loves you enough to forgive you for a mistake. You know she's been the same person all along. But Grandma, why didn't you just tell Mom about the money from the beginning? Maybe things would have been different. I considered this. Jessica, do you remember what your mother said about me last week? That I was broke, bitter, and a burden? She nodded reluctantly. Those words came from somewhere inside her. They revealed how she really saw me when she thought I had nothing to offer if I'd told her about the money from the beginning. I never would have learned who she really was, but maybe she would have treated you better. Yes, she would have, but would that treatment have been based on love or on the hope of inheritance? Jessica was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I want to understand, Mom. I want to believe there's still good in her. There might be. People can change, though it's rare. But Jessica, I need you to understand that I didn't do this to punish your mother. I did it to protect myself and to find out where I really stood with my family. What happens now? Now you go to college in the fall like you planned. You build your own life based on your own values. You stay in touch with me if you want to. Not because you have to or because there's money involved, but because you genuinely care. Of course I care, Grandma. I've always cared. I know you have. That's why you're not losing anything in this situation. My will now leaves most of my estate to you, with provisions for education, travel, and building the kind of life you want. But you won't inherit it for many years, God willing, and in the meantime, I expect you to make your own way in the world." Ruth smiled. "Your grandmother is giving you something more valuable than money, Jessica. She's giving you the truth about your family and the chance to decide what kind of person you want to be." That evening, back in my little house in Asheville, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea and thought about the day. The rain had returned, drumming against the windows just like it had a week ago when this all began. My phone rang. It was Vivian. "Mother, I've been thinking, have you? I want to apologize. I think I handled this badly. I waited. I was worried about you. Maybe I expressed it wrong, but I was genuinely concerned, Vivian. Do you remember what you said to me? The exact words. Silence. You called me broke, bitter, and a burden. You threatened to have me declared incompetent. You tried to manipulate me into signing over financial power of attorney. Which part of that was worry? And which part was you seeing me as an inconvenience to be managed?" I don't know what to say. Try the truth." Another long silence. Then, "I don't know if I can change, Mother. I don't know if I know how to love someone without thinking about what I might get from them." It was the most honest thing she'd said to me in years. "That's a start," I said quietly. "Is there any chance you might change your mind about the will?" There it was again. Even in her moment of near honesty, she couldn't help asking about the money. "Vivian, I'm 73 years old. I could live another 20 years. Or I could be gone next month. If you spend that time trying to get back into my will, you'll miss any chance we might have had for a real relationship." What kind of relationship? The kind where you call to ask how I'm feeling, not to find out if I need financial management. The kind where you visit because you want to see me, not because you're checking on your investment. The kind where you love me enough to let me live my life on my own terms, even if those terms seem strange to you. I don't know if I'm capable of that. Then that's something you'll have to figure out. But Vivian, I want you to know something. Despite everything that's happened, despite the way you've treated me, you're still my daughter. The offer to rebuild our relationship will always be there, but it has to be real. And it has to start with you accepting that my worth as a person isn't tied to my bank account. After we hung up, I walked through my little house, the house Vivian had called falling apart. The house she'd said I couldn't afford to maintain. I touched the walls my husband had painted, ran my fingers along the banister he'd sanded and stained, stood in the kitchen where I'd raised my daughter and welcomed my granddaughter. This house wasn't a sign of poverty. It was a testament to contentment, to choosing love over luxury, to understanding that wealth means more than money in the bank. I thought about Jessica. How she'd looked at me with new eyes today, not because I was rich, but because I'd shown her that people aren't always what they seem, that strength sometimes looks like vulnerability, and that the most important battles are fought not for money but for dignity and truth. I thought About Ruth, who'd stood by me even when my plan seemed cruel. Who'd understood that sometimes we have to risk everything to discover what's really worth having. And I thought about Vivian, my complicated, damaged daughter, who might still find her way back to loving someone just for who they are in the end. That's what this was all about, not revenge, though it might have looked that way from the outside. It was about discovery, discovering who would love me when they thought I had nothing, discovering who would stand by me when things got difficult. Discovering the difference between being valued as a person and being valued as a source of potential wealth. I'd learned that Jessica's love was real, that Ruth's friendship was unshakable, and that Vivian still had some growing to do. As for me, I'd learned that $12 million was just a number on a piece of paper. What mattered was having people in your life who would love you just as much if that number was 12,000. Or 1,200 or 12. The rain continued to fall outside my kitchen window, but inside my little house, I felt richer than I'd ever felt before, not because of the money in my investment accounts, but because I finally knew who I could count on when it really mattered, and sometimes that knowledge is worth more than all the money in the world.